Well, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and start with roll call.
Mr. Albright?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Nicely? Mr. Mackey?
Present.
And Mr. Schaenhofer?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Carla. We'll go ahead and move on to the first hearing of the public. And then from there, the next on the agenda is the public hearing.
Melanie, did you want to hear about the public hearings this year involved with the IDEA resolution? Okay, I don't hear Melanie.
Mindy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Maureen.
Yeah, I've got a lot
If you want, would you like me to do that for Melanie?
That would be great. I can do it, but I know one of you guys had planned on doing it. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So whoever wants to speak up about the IDEA funds.
Basically, you have to have for the board's purpose and any community members that happen to be on, you have to have a public hearing to allow any individual from the community at large to identify other reasons money should be spent one way or the other. Typically, schools spend their IDEA money on staff. Typically, they spend it on occupational therapy, speech therapy, psychological services, all related to the ETR. Whatever money thereafter is left is typically spent on supplies that are consumable, meaning that the kids use throughout their learning to obtain their, individual goals. So this is simply an opportunity for anyone from the community to comment on how that money is spent and the program that is offered at West Central. If anyone has any comments or has any specific questions, this is also an opportunity for anyone to chime in and ask a question or make a comment.
And we do.
If no one,
Oh, I'm sorry, Maureen.
no, go ahead. I didn't know you were on yet, Melanie. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just having terrible feedback. What we do spend the money on is salary and a few supplies, and that's about all that we receive. It doesn't even count, doesn't even cover the whole salary.
Exactly. So if there's no other comment, you can close this portion of the meeting and document it as being held, and you guys are in compliance then with the requirements of IDEA, and when audited, this would be noted by the auditors. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Maureen, for explaining. So it looks like next on the agenda, we'll have to do a roll call to officially approve.
Yeah, but we need someone to make a motion and a second to approve the IDEA use of funds.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
Thank you, Melanie. Second.
Thank you. I think we're going to turn your volume down. I did.
Carla's having a lot of feedback problems.
Try that. Okay. So you're not going to be able to hear that. That was, I didn't, this one didn't go any lower.
Should we use headphones?
I can, yeah, whatever you want me to do.
Let's try that.
Okay, I'll make, wow, it is me.
I'm gonna mute her till she gets it. Well, I'll wait since she's working on getting her. Whoops. I muted her till she gets that set up. Carla, I did mute you. You'll need to unmute.
Okay.
There we, perfect. That's much better.
Oh,
Much
okay.
better.
All right.
That's nice.
Thank you. I just love this look. Yeah. Okay. Calling the roll call, Mr. Shanehofer
Yes.
and Ms. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
and Mr. Albright. Motion carried.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Next, we'll move along to the consent agenda. Could I get a motion to move on the agenda?
I'll move.
Thank you, Steve. A second?
Second?
Thank you, Michael. And Mindy, I will turn it over to you to go through the items.
Okay, letter A is employment. Every May, we put the employment down for the following year. And I do want to note that the salaries that you're seeing there have been increased 2.5%. So I'm asking the board today to approve for all the staff a 2.5% increase for next school year. They have not had an increase the last 3 years. We've just had some financial difficulty at that time, and enrollment had dropped and so forth, and we lost some significant dollar amount in grant fundings, federal grant money. So staff has not had a raise, and they have more than earned it.
Mhm.
And quite honestly, I'd love to offer more than 2.5%, but Carla and I talked, and that's what we think that the budget can allow for. So that is included in every single person's salary that you see here. So pretty much this is what you see every year. There's been no new employees added, the same employees that we've had as last year, the same positions and so forth. Stipends and extended days, those run August 1st to June 30th. Same thing. Andrew Blass, thankfully, is willing to come up here if it's during the night or something, or off hours, simply because where we're located. And he does the security alarm calls, which we don't have very many of them, but he's willing to do that. So we compensate him for his time, as well as Robin. She sometimes has to do some work for special education that's beyond her work day. So that's the employment, letter A. And then also extended days. We've done this in the past with Melanie Nixon because her contract days are up at the end of May. And so she does a lot of work with our CCIP, which is our federal funding. And so the board has been gracious every year to allow her to have an extra 5 days if she needs them to work on the CCIP at her per diem. Letter B, I sent this out to the board a while back, but we had a request from a student about bringing a service animal on the property. And come to find out, we did not have a board policy on it. And I have something in the discussion items later today to talk about board policies, but I did reach out to our attorney. And so that's the first reading of board policy 1600, animals on West Central Learning Academy property. Letter C, Carla and I talked, and instead of $15 an hour, we'd like to recommend that it be $25 an hour for professional development for staff, and that comes out of federal funding. The reason being, we're seeing, especially with right now what's going on in the job market and how employers are not able to find employees, and even places like a lot of food service places, for instance, McDonald's, I believe Carla said she saw where they were offering either $15 or $18 an hour to people to come and work there. So we thought we need to bump up for our staff the hourly rate to $25 at a minimum. So instead of 15, we're recommending 25. Letter D, equipment inventory disposal. We now have 39 instead of 30. So we're going to make that modification. We have 39 Chromebooks and 1 charger that are no longer operable. And the reason being, we've just had a lot of them that we've had for a long time. And as students are starting to turn them in at the end of the year, we're finding a few more that we don't want to send those back out next year to students. So we have 39, and that's reflected on the inventory sheet that you have in that Google file. Letter E, the class of 2021 graduation requirements, and this is very similar to what we did last year because of the pandemic, because of how school was conducted this school year, and just many factors that we've never dealt with before as far as students perhaps being exposed to COVID-19 and so forth. ODE and the legislators have allowed flexibility in how a student can graduate. So letter F is WCLA's into the 2021 school year plan for credits and grades. And so you can read through what those are, but these guidelines are just for this school year on credits and grades. And then letter G is our resolution for students who have met one of the pathways that ODE has allowed for as far as graduation. And so we have a list of names, and you have that list as one of your handouts. We have 27 students that are graduating this school year. We've noted, I should say Melanie noted, what pathway they graduated. And one of the reasons Brian is here is we actually created, per the recommendation of Maureen, a form for each student that will go in their file documenting that how they met the graduation requirements for this year. So if we get audited on this, we can document that they met it according to this standard or this standard or this pathway. And they're all pathways that have already been approved by ODE. And just as a side note, we had 11 students meet the requirements early to graduate. So I had the honor this year of passing out 11 diplomas beforehand. And then this week, we've been having the students come back in. I had one on Monday. We had several Tuesday afternoon, several yesterday afternoon, a couple this morning. And then I think there's like 5 or 6 after the board meeting this morning who are coming in, and I'm personally handing them their diploma with their family present if they wanted to invite them and they could take pictures. And we're just doing that this year because tomorrow when we have the graduation ceremony on Zoom, they wouldn't have that opportunity like what we've done in years past where we actually have a ceremony and they can come up and get their picture taken and receive their diploma. So we try to make the most of it this year by offering those one-on-one appointments with students. So that's the graduation.
Is the 11 in addition to the 27?
No, that includes the 27, but of those 27, 11 of them graduated early, which is remarkable. I was just so proud of them this year. And some of that's due to the fact that there was a little bit more flexibility in how they could graduate because of the pandemic. So that benefited our students greatly. But you've got to keep in mind, and I know you guys realize this, but the majority of our students here are dropout prevention and recovery. So for students who are at risk of dropping out, to have 11 of them graduate early is quite an accomplishment. So I just want to thank the staff because they work very, very hard with our students to make sure that A, they get to graduation, and then secondly, to have that many graduate early is quite an honor. So I'm very, very proud of the students, very proud of the staff for that accomplishment. And then letter H, contract for mental health services with SAFI. We had this ready to go last spring. I believe I had it on the March agenda, and then out of nowhere, we were forced to close because of the mandate from the governor to close all the schools. So we just tabled it. And so I got a hold of Judy Lester last month and said, you know, we'd like to reopen this and have this available for our students for this coming school year. So we have grant money to be able to do this. And I've provided you with the contract so you could look it over, but we would love to have a social worker be here with our students next school year for about 6 hours a week. And so if the board approves that, then I'll ask Brian to sign that after the meeting and we'll move forward with that. Letter I, that's the organizational flow chart for next school year, which is pretty much the same as this school year, but these are, some of these things are things that I have to submit to the Office of School Sponsorship at ODE. So I put them on the board agenda to get your approval. The Buckeye Association of School Administrators, that's the membership that I belong to. I get a lot of information from them for superintendents. They update me on legislative issues. They have conferences, so very worthwhile. And then letter K, revision of board policies. It's 5200 student code of conduct on weapons in the school. And the reason that has to be revised is we had to make an amendment to that policy because included in there is what we do with students who are suspended as far as making up coursework. And so we had to update that to reflect new legislation. So I sent that to our attorney. That's been updated. Letter L, Maureen recommended this because, again, the Office of School Sponsorship is going to require this, but basically just that you're passing a resolution accepting the entire board policy manual And so I've given you the table of contents for that. And we've done that. You guys have done that before. All the board policies in there are already board approved, but it's just saying that, yes, you're accepting the entire policy manual. And then I'm going to skip, if you don't mind, I'm going to go from letter L. We have an addendum. And this way, after I get done, then Carla can take over. But we're going to go to the addendum. And these are some items that came in after I put that agenda out. You can tell it's the end of the year and there's just a lot to get done. The Office of School Sponsorship at ODE, that's who sponsors WCLA. They have issued a contract modification to us and any school that's sponsored by them, simply because they need us to incorporate the new legislative updates into the contract that we have with them, which is a 5-year contract, and we're in the middle of that 5 years with them. And then any changes that we've made to curriculum, assessments, or our educational program offerings. And then because of the remote learning plans that were required last year, and you've already adopted that, they just want to include all of that in our contract. And so I sent this to our attorney, and I emailed all the board members to let you know that I did that. Our attorney is fine with it. The only changes that we made on our end was we updated, and that's this big document that, let me see if I can pull it up here. It looks like, this, but this document is our educational plan, and we just updated it because we no longer use Odyssey, where we use Apex Learning. And so we updated that, and then we used a STAR assessment. And then as far as the 3 goals that the Office of School Sponsorship wanted us to put in there, we did make a change to graduation pathways and just made it customized to WCLA. And we've already received approval from the Office of School Sponsorship that that is okay. So to my knowledge, everything that we have stated in the contract modification resolution, excuse me, and then these other documents that I've shared with you for that have all been approved by our attorney. And then I've gotten an email just confirming that they would be approved by the Office of School Sponsorship. And now I need the board to approve it and then Brian to sign it, so that way we can get the documents submitted. So that is that. And then one last thing, and that is I'm going to add letter T to the addendum. And letter T will be the resignation of Mike Nicely, school board member. He just emailed Brian and I probably 10 minutes before the board meeting started, stating that he was officially resigning from the board. And so I believe he has just a lot of commitments going on, and he's just unable to fulfill his responsibilities here. And so that's going to be part of the consent agenda too, is to accept that resignation. And then once that's accepted, then I think we should have a discussion about, you know, who we might want to tap into to see if they would be interested in serving on the board, because we'll need to get that filled rather quickly. So I know that's a lot that I covered. Are there any questions about any of the content that I covered?
No, I don't have any questions. Thanks, Mindy, for going through all that. And I understand with all the commitments that Mike has, I hate to see him leave our board. He was a great asset, but I also understand he's got a lot on his plate right now. So.
Mm-hmm. And then Carla, did you want to share your items with the board that's under the consent?
Yes, if we just want to continue with the consent agenda, then for letters O through S. Letter O is the workers' compensation. This is an annual approval is needed. This is our coverage for calendar year 22. And you can see that we have a group rating cost of $677 plus $50 for the annual service fee. That actually is a little bit cheaper than last year and went down probably about $100. So that's unusual. But then letter P, the same thing. This is an annual renewal of our policy for property general liability with the Schools of Ohio Risk Sharing Authority. That we had a 5.5% increase over last year. So you can see the cost there at $4,665. Letter Q is to approve Robin and Andrew to attend a career tech conference in July. They will in Columbus. They'll drive down the night before, so that's why we're asking for the 1.5 extended days. Letter R is an annual approval for the IRS Form 990 because we are a nonprofit organization, 501c3. We are required to submit this 990 form, which Ray and Associates prepare, and that is in your packet if you want to go back and look at that. And then S is the annual motion needed so that I cannot spend any money until you approve next year appropriations. So we have temporary appropriations for July, August, and September. So this says that we have up to $175,000 for general fund and $40,000 for other funds during that time period that we can spend. Since our next meeting is hopefully in August, I will have the permanent appropriations approved and we should be good. Is there any questions about that? You guys have the power. I can't spend a dime unless you tell me to. So that's basically what that is. And then if we go back to the agenda, I would like to let you know that on letter D, on the equipment inventory disposal, that we do not track chargers. We don't inventory them. We don't put stickers on them. So I'm going to remove the language that says that we have 39 Chromebooks and 1 charger. I'm going to take that out because we do not track chargers. So I don't want the auditors looking for chargers. So I will remove that from letter D. So if we go on then to, let me get to that page.
I believe
The
it's
minute-
M. We need to go back to M.
M.
Mm-hmm. The minutes and financial reports from you.
Yep. Okay. So you have all of those documents in your packet, but the one I want to go over is the 5-year forecast. So if Lynn can pull that up, we are required to submit this twice in the school year. So this is our spring submission. And I'm going to pay attention to the fiscal year 21, the first highlighted there. It shows that our operating receipts projected amount through June 30th is $537,755. If you go down a little bit, you'll see that expenses are estimated through June at a little over 600,000, which obviously puts us in the red, 62,555. Again, this is all a best estimate, but the next set of rows is the amount of grant money that we will be getting. So then if you go down a little bit farther on the screen with that, you'll see that total non-operating revenue over expenses, then that puts us in the black at 96,000. And then excess of operating and revenue disbursements, then that brings us down to 33,000. So we went from 62 in the red, added in the revenue from the grants, that brings us to 33,561. So hopefully our year-end balance at the end of June will be 566,000. Now, when I compare that to November, when our first estimate, the balance projected was $567,075. So we're very close with our estimate. We have Mindy keeps us on track. We know what we're doing and what we're going to be buying and stuff. So I think the forecast looks good. We'll see what happens next year when we're not in a pandemic, but if you go down then after the 566,000, go down just a little bit more than to forecasted for in the enrollment, you can see that 2020 we had 55.67, and for fiscal year 21 we're at 69. So that helped tremendously. The rest of the rows and columns are just breakdown of the expenses. So if you want to look at that, but to save time, I will just say this is the forecast I'd like to submit unless you have any questions or concerns.
Is the days of cash at the bottom?
Yes, it is, Mike. I see it on page.
Yeah. Yeah, page 3.
Well, actually, page 3. Yeah, I've got paper copies.
Yeah.
Underneath the financial metrics.
Yeah, the last one, days of cash, 0.89.
What does that mean? I mean, you have only less than a day's worth of cash?
Yes. But it depends so much on the revenue from the grants that we receive. So we have more revenue coming in from grants than what's listed on this form that we've received. This is just an estimate of this forecast.
I mean, to me, it seems that in less than one day, we don't have any more cash left. And to me, it seems like we have plenty of cash available that we should not be running out of cash in less than a day.
Right. But estimated on what we're spending for the whole year, 600,000. Yeah, the numbers don't lie. That's right.
Yeah.
If we would close our doors today and have to expend, all of our expenses, it would be less than a day. That is correct. That's a good indicator of the fiscal health, as they say. But when you look at, let me pull out our other form. Let's see if that's even.
I guess I don't understand how that is calculated, because to me, if we have no revenue coming in right now, we have, cash in the bank right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see that cash.
But we still are operating in the red based on our receipts versus our expenses.
Until the grants come in.
Yes.
And those come in typically June?
Well, I have to do project cash requests. As we spend the money, then they send it to us. So it's not like they send us the total amount of the grant at the beginning. Because like some of these grants, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, where I'm only can show what I've received so far or what I'm going to spend. Then there's carryover involved into next year, but I do not have the full amount of the grant listed. It's just what I've received so far.
I guess I just want to follow up with what Steve was saying. So if you're calculating the cash on hand based on revenue and expenses, actual revenue and expenses, then I can see that. But you have $533,000 in the bank right now. I mean, you have carryover of 533, and you're going to add 33,000 to that. You're estimating at the end of the year. So if your actual, just the way I'm looking at it, your actual cash available
Right.
is actually almost 360 days of cash on hand.
Right. And it's just the way that this form is set up, because if you look at the monthly report that we prepare for ODE, our days cash is phenomenal, because they are looking at actual, where this is an estimate and they're looking at what our estimated revenue is, minus our disbursements. So we're 62,000 in the red. So that's the numbers that it's using.
So whose form is that? That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I have to say that isn't even very helpful because
Yeah.
it's not really a good picture. I mean, everything else you've done is a very good picture, but that,
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
that used to be a metric I would use with my board
Yeah.
and for agencies held to how much, if you had to close your doors right today,
Right.
how much, well, you could keep going for a year almost, even if
Yeah.
like no more money was coming in. I mean, if you wanted to, you could keep going for another year just from your reserve. So
Yes.
anyway, I think
It's how the form is set up. That form is given to me. But when I look at our last month's form, that is our monthly form that we have to submit to the sponsor. Our cash days cash is February, March. In February is 276. So it
More
just
sense to me
depends.
that makes a lot more
Yeah.
sense to me than
Yeah.
it's
It's just how the form is set up.
yeah.
And
it's really a form that originated with public schools. And this form, you are 100% correct. This is the worst financial statement for schools. And I will say that Rebecca Vogler and Sheila Vitale have actually raised this up to the department and said, we need a different form, and have actually created one that makes much more sense, because you guys have hit on a topic. It's just not a really clear picture. That's why it's imperative. Carla puts together some great financial records for you guys and some other statements that, a lot of schools don't do. Those are seriously the important ones. This is just not a good representation of it. And Mike, if there's an opportunity where you'd like to sit down with Rebecca from our office, she can kind of explain some other components to it. But Carla's right, it's terrible.
yeah, it's a forecast, which, that's kind of hard to do when you're in the school realm, forecasting out 5 years. But yeah, that's why I like becoming.
I think a lot of the information there is good, except for when we get down to the metrics, some of those metrics is just, those are the ones that confuse me.
Right. That's why I so enjoyed ODE becoming our sponsor, because of this monthly financial report that I am required to submit to them, and it's a much more better picture. So I will post that one after this meeting so that you can see the difference in the two forms and why the other form is much better. Okay.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Now, just a side note, and I'm sure Brian, you'll catch this too, and Carla, but the 5-year forecast, I actually put that as a separate item for you to vote on, because Carla has to submit this by May 31st. So it's a separate, that's really not part of the consent agenda. So I just want to point that out, that when you guys take the vote, they'll need to be on the forecast.
We'll need a motion. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that. I noticed that.
Yep. So, okay. That's all I have.
Okay. And you mentioned, did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
They looked good.
Okay.
We need to.
I joined the meeting on Facebook, but it wasn't on Zoom. But they look good to me.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So do you want to call the roll for the consent agenda or take a motion? Okay.
Yeah, let's call the roll for the consent agenda.
Okay. Mr. Mackey?
Yes.
Mr. Shanehofer?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
And Mr. Albright?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And then for the 5-year forecast on the agenda, we'll need a motion to move forward.
I so move.
Thank you, Millie. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead and roll call.
Ms. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Shanehofer,
Yes.
and Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great. Thank you, Carla, for all your
Yeah.
hard work with the
Thank
financial
you.
documents. It's a lot.
Yeah, I
You
appreciate
do a
it.
great job. Next on the agenda, we have the annual board training required that we do yearly. Do I have a motion to move on it?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay,
Any
and this-
discussions? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, this is just what we did last year. What we would do is we would meet in person because it would be August, and at that point, like I said, the waiver to meet virtually has been lifted by then. But Elizabeth Roverman, our attorney, would meet with us through Zoom. So what we would do is set up a screen and a computer so that we would have her virtually connected to us, and she would offer that Ohio sunshine and ethics law training that we're required to have every year, and do it for about an hour, which is what she did last year. And so what I was thinking was we could have this as part of the August board meeting if you want to, or we can pull it out and do it separately if you'd prefer doing it that way too. I was just trying to be sensitive to everybody's schedule and that kind of thing, be respectful that perhaps you may not want to come twice.
I like that idea of combining it if we can.
Yeah, me too.
I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
Let me throw out a couple of dates. Would August the 12th or the 17th work?
The 12th would be better for me, but I could make the 17th work.
Okay, I do need to double check something. I know she told me there was a week that she could not meet, and so I'm gonna go back here real quick and see if I can pull that up, because all of a sudden that just dawned on me that she had mentioned that. Let me just find her. Okay. Apologize, I'm on a Chromebook. Let's see here. Okay, annual training, here we go. Okay. Give me a moment. Okay, sorry, August 12th is going to be out because she is not available the week of August 9th. I apologize. So would August 17th, that Thursday, or excuse me, that Tuesday work? Tuesday, August 17th?
Works for me.
Could we do it
What
starting
time?
at 10? Yeah, could we do it at 10, starting at 10?
I can do 10. Does that work for everybody else?
Yeah,
Great.
I think I can do 10. I have another meeting at 11:30.
Okay, so we'll have her go first, Millie, and then we'll try to make sure that the other items go rather quickly.
Okay.
As long as we have 3 board members still here after you
Mhm.
leave, that's what's, so if for some reason something comes up with somebody, I would need to know immediately. And hopefully we have a 5th board member secured by then, and perhaps we would probably put them first on the agenda so that way they can officially be part of the meeting, and then have Elizabeth give the training. Okay, I will let her know that. So Tuesday, August 17th, 10 o'clock.
Anyone that can't make that, you have that 5-hour thing to go to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Millie.
In person, I assume. Huh?
Okay. Because the first day of school here is the 19th. And so actually the 17th is kind of nice because if last minute things come up that need to be approved by you, we can get that done right before school starts.
So does that cover all of our training then, Mindy?
Yeah, it's just like what she did last year. She'll do the same thing she did last year, and then she will issue all of us certificates saying that we've met the requirements for the sunshine and the ethics training. And then we'll be covered for the year.
I really appreciate that. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. My pleasure.
Okay, I think we can move on to roll call.
Mr. Shanehofer,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes,
Yes.
and Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next on the agenda, we have the retaining legal services. We'll have to have a motion to move on the adoption of the following resolution.
I'll move.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Michael. Any discussion items?
This is required by our sponsor. Again, they want us to submit a resolution that we have an attorney on retainer and what they do for us. So that's why this is on here. We've always used Elizabeth Properman at Scott and Scriven down in Columbus since I've been here. But we needed to have something official. So I contacted Elizabeth, our attorney, and she drafted this. So that's why it's on the agenda today. We just need it formalized by the board. And then Brian, you'll need to sign that document, or excuse me, Carla will need to sign the document today.
Okay.
Yep, looks good.
All right. Go ahead and roll call to officially approve.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Shanehofer,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes,
Yes.
and Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next on the agenda, we have the sponsor report. Maureen?
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Hey, I went on location so I could be on camera. So I apologize if there's some background noise. I've got a large posse of birds around me chirping. So yeah. I apologize. I don't know what is wrong with the internet at the house, but nevertheless, it's crazy. So yesterday I sent out a newsletter from the Office of School Sponsorship. I won't, read through those items. Many of them are more pertinent to, the Carlas, the Melanies, the Mindys of the world. But it is informational. There's some good pieces in there for you as a board as well. One thing I do want to say is thank you for doing the training in August. It makes it so much easier for the schools with regards to compliance. And I have to say that you guys are always the first to get it done. And we definitely appreciate that. There's a lot of compliance items. There's over 927 items that the schools are responsible for. We are currently working through the spring survey. We hope to have that done probably by next week sometime. I don't anticipate any issues. Again, you guys are very thorough. You guys keep excellent documentation. Your school leadership is one of the best. So I don't anticipate any issues with that. It's a lot of policy things. And I see today on the agenda, you renewed the policy manual. There's a couple updates here and there that you guys do throughout the year. So you guys are very on top of things. So should have no issues with that. I did complete an observation at the school as part of your spring compliance. I had the privilege of watching your teacher, Andrew Blass. I just can't say enough about him as a teacher. He just makes math so easy to understand. Within his lesson, all the kids are logged on. He has a whiteboard. He puts the problem up and he literally draws out and works through the thinking and the strategies behind it as he's going through it for the kids. There's a lot of back and forth with the kids, a lot of good conversation with the kids. He is so available to them. It's unbelievable. So within that class period, he spends over an hour working through problems, helping the kids think through the processes. And then after that, he opens it up and says, hey, today from like 2 to 3:30, I'll be on. Just log on when you guys want help or you have a question or email me a different time and I'll log on and we can go through problems, you know, that you're having one-on-one, or, you know, whoever happens to join on later in the afternoon. So the availability of all of your staff, I'm singling out Andrew just simply because I observed him, but the availability of your staff to provide extra, you know, intervention with the kids, just moral support for the kids is really, really good. And I was really pleased. I love watching Andrew teach. He's just a great teacher. So kudos to you guys, kudos to Andrew, and to whoever hired him. He's definitely a gem, especially with math. Wow. Couple other items, just I'll bring up as a reminder. The AARP, and try to keep this alphabet together as a board and as a school, it's difficult. So we've had 3 series of ESSER money, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and now ESSER 3, which has been identified as AARP ESSER. Just want to bring this to the attention of the school. That money and that plan became available on May 7th. You have a 90-day window by which to submit that plan to ODE, which takes us to like, August the 4th, thereabouts. If you don't do that plan by that window, which Melanie normally is right on top of these things, then you can't get those funds. So I just want to bring that to light. It's a little different than any of our other CCIP kind of allocations and things like that. The other thing that I'm going to say, and we are working through it as an office, there are a ton of assurances for this particular set of monies. Assurances that you as a board have to provide, assurances that, you know, Mindy as the school superintendent has to agree to. A lot of strings attached to it. It doesn't mean that, you know, we don't even want the money because it's too much hassle, but we do want to be really clear. These assurances have to be documented, have to be calculated. There's another hearing that you guys are going to have at some point as well, probably that August meeting, to accept them funds and to, you know, have a hearing for the community to kind of discuss how that money gets spent. So we are working on a kind of like a punch list of what all those assurance items are to make it a little more user-friendly for the schools, and just to make sure none of us, including us, miss any of the steps along the way that would cause you guys to have to repay money or have any issues. So stay tuned on that. Rebecca from our office is our financial person. She has been digging through all the federal statutes on it, all the federal guidelines. And again, we hope to have that out to you guys early in June. Minnie, I don't know if you had your hand up or.
I do. I had a question. So Maureen, because you guys are usually pretty good about this, if we have to have a hearing, will OSS send us some sort of like resolution or wording or whatever
Yes.
you need to put on the
Yes,
agenda?
we definitely will. Just like I did with the IDEA one,
Right.
we'll draft resolution for you. It'll probably be pretty similar, because again, it's just an opportunity for the public to comment.
Okay.
It's easy, but it is federal money, and so we have to hit every guideline on it. And it's not necessarily for the ESSER 1 or 2. It's really this ESSER 3 where some tighter strings are connected to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And then again, this one is just really for Carla. CRs for this next coming up month. I don't know if the board's aware, but ESSER funds have been kind of held back a little bit because of a statutory kind of inaccuracy in the way they wrote the bill. What happened is they left out a piece, and so that money hasn't been able to be dispersed. So Carla's been putting in PCRs, and some of them have been kind of dragging out a little longer than normal. Continue to put those PCRs in. That money will flow as soon as this kind of connotation semantic kind of issue gets corrected. But we do want to be clear, if you have PCRs, we strongly encourage that all of them get submitted by June 15th. So keep that as an important date for yourself as a school.
Okay.
Other than that, you know, Mindy mentioned that, you know, you can no longer meet virtually like we've been able to. That actually ends, like she said here, coming up in July. There is a piece in the legislation through one of the budget bills that would extend it to December. So there's a chance that you could still meet virtually as we go into next school year until December. Again, stay tuned on that. We're not sure if it'll get passed through or not. It was submitted in that budget, so there's a chance it may get missed, and they'll allow it to go through then. We will keep you updated on that as well. other than that, I think things are in great shape. Congratulations to, Mindy, Melanie, and the rest of the teaching staff, 27 graduates. I think right now, I have a couple more board meetings, but I think right now that tops our graduation class for the Office of School Sponsorships. So you guys are to be commended. I mean, it's been really difficult this year, trying to keep the kids engaged. So the school's done a really nice job on it. And I always appreciate the updates. I actually signed up and I get the alerts. The alerts are so great. Sign up, come in, take your assessments, come in, take your end of course exams. The school does an incredible job communicating with their students and parents alike. So again, kudos to you guys as a school for that. And congratulations on an exceptionally high number of graduates this year. That's it for me, unless you guys have any specific questions.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you,
We
guys.
appreciate it. Thanks for the updates. Next on the agenda, we have the enrollment, attendance, tracking, and participation.
Lynn, this is actually you. That's our enrollment chart. That's what I go over in discussion. I can do it now, but Lynn,
I got it.
you got it? Yeah,
Okay,
it's your,
yeah. So, looking at May, we had 80. We did have in April more in March, but then we had a lot of graduates. At the end of the year, there were a few kids we had to force withdraw that had reached the 72-hour of not doing anything, even though we were trying to talk with parents and students. But we ended the year with 80 students. I'm going to also talk about the resident verification now, if that's okay. So in April, 13 withdrawn, 5 of those were the early graduates. We had a couple that transferred out at the end of the year. The breakdown of how many from each district: Bath 2, Lida 35, Lima 38, Lincoln View 1, Perry 2, Shawnee 2, Upper Scioto Valley 1, and Wapak 1. Total of 82 students there. One open dispute that we are working on being able to close. I know when I have our attendance intervention meetings, I always ask, or try to always ask, if the student has moved or not. And then if they have to get us the correct documents proving that. So that's about all I have for that.
Thank you, Lynn. Let's see. Looks like we have Melanie up next on the OIP focus plan.
Yes, yes. Good morning. Okay, there are a couple things. We do not receive our end of course test exam results until middle of June. So hopefully we'll see some improvement. We really put a lot of effort into tutoring our kids that were taking the Algebra 1 and geometry exams. Those kids struggle with those. So we did some major tutoring for almost a whole month with those kids. Not everyone participated, so we're hoping it still paid off. Also, next year, we're going to hopefully bring our kids in 2 mornings a week, 8 to noon, and do English, math, and of course get focused, stay focused. So we'll circulate our kids throughout those 3 classes. And then we're also looking at providing our students with work study credit. We've done it in the past, but we've kind of laid low on it simply because some of our kids were so transient. So this year we're going to hopefully have a partnership with McDonald's as well as a few other employers that our students are working for. And Mr. Blass will be freed up a little bit to be able to kind of take that on. The work study will give them credit for hours that they have worked, and also work towards the Ohio Means Job seal. And he's going to really kind of focus in on those kids about works skills, just employment skills, anything that they need support on, and as well as the businesses that they're working with. He is going to be our liaison. And Mrs. Sonstegard is really going to focus in on our student success plan, because that's a major part of our contract with ODE. So we're really honing in on that. We're also hopefully receive a grant that we may offer entrepreneurship credentials, or the seal, for our students. And that is through EdVision, and we signed up for that. So we'll know if we get that grant in July, and I'm hoping we do. I've got some kids that are really excited about participating in that. So as soon as we get our test results, we're going to really analyze, see what we did for the math part, and see if it's improved the number of kids that have passed. Any questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie, for sharing. Some discussion items.
Okay, first I'm going to add, before the Neola services, I'm going to add, since it came up right before the board meeting, the replacement for Mike Nicely. I just wanted to toss out a name. Teresa Loescher was employed here for a number of years. We have used her a few times when we changed tech coordinators, and that was like 2 years ago or so. She worked for us a few days to help with that transition. I don't anticipating employing Teresa for anything in the future. That would be the one drawback. If we had her hypothetically as a board member, she could not work for us either. But because of her experience here, I just thought that might be someone to consider. And I didn't know if the board would want to reach out to her, or if the board has other people in mind that they think would want to serve on the WCLA board. But we do need to get that filled, preferably by the August board meeting. Thoughts on that from anybody? I realize this is kind of last minute, but we just got it 10 minutes beforehand too. So
I think Teresa would make a great board member. I mean, I think she has a lot of expertise. However, if we can get someone from business, I think that we need that rather than stay within education. If we can get someone from business, I think we should reach there first.
does
I don't
anybody
have anyone in mind, but if someone else does.
I can't think of anybody either. It would be good, I agree with Millie, find somebody from business, but I think, is it Teresa? I think she would be, have a good, have a good view of the whole school education and how WCLA works. I mean, obviously I would think she'd be pretty committed to it.
I can't think of anybody right now offhand from business.
The issue we've run into in the past is we just haven't been able to recruit board members. Unless someone personally knows someone, it seems like we've not been able to get board members, and that's been a real challenge for us. And so I agree, I think it'd be nice to have representation, but because of how we're designed, and these aren't, elected positions or whatever, as far as from the public, it's just a little more challenging to get people. It's just challenging, I think, in general, just to get people to want to commit to boards and things like that. So
yeah, I'd be glad to talk with Jed Metzger and see if he could recommend someone.
And that'd be great if you would
Yeah.
do that, Millie. I'm be thrilled if you did that. Now let me just ask the board, just simply because we're not going to be having a meeting that I know of between now and August. If for some reason that does not turn up with any names, or the names that Jed gives, those people aren't interested, worst case scenario, are there objections if we've explored the option of a business person and it just doesn't pan out? Are there any objections? And this doesn't even, I don't even know if Teresa would be interested or not, to someone talking to Teresa.
No, that sounds good. I think you should go ahead.
Okay.
No objection.
Millie or Mindy,
Yes.
I have an idea, but he lives in Columbus now, but Bob Green is a former graduate who now works in the tech industry. So it would be from business. He knows our school,
Okay.
but I don't know if he'd be interested as he lives in Columbus, but he's.
And I think that's a great idea, but I think that's kind of what we've run into with Mike Nicely, because he's in Columbus working. I think it's just been a challenge for him to be able to, that's just, it's logistically, I think, a hardship to do that. Plus he's got a lot of responsibilities at his job.
Just wanted to throw that out there. I know
Absolutely.
Millie knows him also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Bob would be great, but if we were continuing on Zoom, it might be easier, but
Yeah.
to have him come to board
Yeah.
meetings is difficult.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this, Millie. If you don't mind, I will let you, or the board will let you go ahead and pursue that with Jed Metzger. And then if you just want to, whatever names he gives you, unless the board has objections, go ahead and get a hold of that person. And because you've recruited board members for us before, quite a few, and just explain to them what they do, and I can talk to them as well. And then if we can get a name, great. And if not, if we don't have a name, I would say by, I don't know, the end of July or so, then we need to go to plan B.
Right, I
Does
agree.
that sound-
Another person that we could reach out to that might have contacts or know of someone that would be willing to serve is Joe Patton with Ohio Means Jobs. He might know some folks or give us some recommendations.
Brian, would you be willing to reach out to Joe?
Yeah, I can reach out to Joe.
Okay.
I apologize
Do
for
we-
not the answer to this, but do you guys have a YMCA in your local area?
We do.
Yes.
I have a couple boards that have the president of the YMCA on their board for the school, and the partnership and the things that they provide for the school free of charge is unbelievable. If anyone knows anyone associated, that is, I don't know if they're required to be on so many boards, but a bunch of my schools have presidents of the Ys on theirs, and it's really been a good partnership. That's just another idea if you need.
So Millie, do you want to reach out to Jed
Yes, I will.
first? Okay.
Well, I think that we can have multiple names because they may
Okay.
say no.
And if other people think of people, I realize, again, I know we're just kind of putting this out there. You haven't had time to think about it, but if you think of somebody, because sometimes after the meeting, a couple days later, you might even run into somebody. I think anyone who thinks of anyone should just go ahead and ask them, because you never know when we might need another board member even down the line. So I like to have backups for the backups in place. And so I think
If we get too many, I can resign.
I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. But I do appreciate you guys brainstorming and reaching out to your contacts and just seeing where we can go with it. Okay, the first item I did have on there, which I do want to talk about today, is Neola. And Neola is one of two services that provides board policies, and they also will provide administrative guidelines if you want them to school districts. And so a lot of schools use Neola, and what they do is the Neola rep will come, they meet with me and Carla, and they go over like any new board policies, and they provide boilerplates, and then you fill in your personalized information into that boilerplate. And it's nice because then just like that, and what brought this about, I've talked to the board about Neola before, but what brought it about again is when we have that student request bringing a service animal on site. And I've done my best that when we have new legislative updates come out, or the Office of School Sponsorship tells us, hey, you need to have a board policy. Of course, I get a hold of the attorney and we get one done. But to possibly think of all the things that we could need a policy for, that's just a little bit beyond what, you know, I'm able to do. I don't have a degree in law, although I know quite a bit about it just from this position. But with that being said, that's what Neola does in a nutshell. So I reached out to our area rep, and his name is Kevin Brinkman. He's a former superintendent. I believe he was up in Ottawa-Glandorf before he started working for Neola. And I asked him if he would send us an estimate of what it would cost. And so I even clarified this, and I'm just going to go off of this email, but I think it's quite expensive. Carla and I both were pretty surprised at the amount, but there's a one-time setup fee of $16,150. And what they would do is they recommend, like all the board policies that we have, we would pretty much not use those anymore. We would replace them with all of their board policies. So probably be a lot of work involved in that step. And then what they would do, that also includes online setup. So what they do is they put all the board policies online for us on the website. And then after you pay the initial $16,150, then there's an annual fee of $1,225 for the update service twice a year, and then a $750 maintenance fee for the online service. So you're looking at almost every year then, after you pay that initial $16,000, almost a $2,000 annual fee. So it's not cheap. And I wasn't expecting $16,000 to be the initial setup fee. And I just want to put that out there just because it's really the board's decision. I don't have a problem continuing to use our attorney, but the downside of that is there could be more instances where we have something come up that we're not prepared for because we don't have a policy on it. And it's simply because nobody thought to have a policy on it. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of the nice part about Neola, but then the downside is it's very expensive in my opinion. So I just want to put that out there for discussion today.
Mindy, what would generally, when you ask the attorney to do a policy, what's the range of a cost for her to do a policy for you?
And that's a great question. We just got invoiced a couple of days ago. And I'm just going to give a ballpark number. Carla, please chime in on this. Because Mike, the other part of it is if I have to have dialogue with her or I email her for clarification, then obviously that adds cost to our bill. So I have learned to try to avoid those things so that we can save money, but sometimes it's just inevitable that I have to, like with that service animal policy, I had to ask a couple of follow-up questions because the situation kind of continued on. Even after she gave me advice, we had more involvement with that student. So anyways, to answer your question, I'm going to say it's roughly around maybe $500 to $600. Carla, would you agree?
Well, so far this year, we've spent almost 6,000, but of course,
that was a lot
probably
of coronavirus stuff though.
right. That was, yes.
But if like, for instance, if you pull up that invoice that we just received last week, and I believe that covered this service animal, I can even go back and pull it up here real quick as I'm talking to you, everyone. So
Let me see.
I just got the invoice and let's see here. It was May 17th, 2021. And we were billed $433.50. And that was regarding just the sunshine law training and for her to review and revise this. For her to review and revise the suspension policy might cost us $382.50. But then we had a previous balance. So let me see if I can pull up, maybe it's on the last, I'll pull up this other one. This is
Mindy, while you're pulling that up, if you want, there are a couple other attorneys that work with some of our other schools, and one off the top of my head, like on a policy, like the change with the Title IX for suspension expulsion that just kind of happened with all the schools. When she does a policy rewrite like that, that every one of the schools in her portfolio has to have, she takes that $300 and divides it among all the schools. So you may pay $45 for that update.
Okay.
That's how she does it.
And who is this?
And I just recently reached out to her because one of my other schools is looking for a different service as well. They kind of have a situation like you guys, where you sometimes use your attorney, sometimes you don't. And they are exploring it. So that's the only reason I know that one off the top of my head. If you want, I can give you a list of some of the attorneys, and you can get quotes or, communicate with them on what they offer.
And that would be fine. Like I say, I don't mind. I mean, our attorney is great. It just would be, there's benefits to both ways of doing it, and
There
then
is.
cons of both ways of doing it. I just want the board to be aware that going the route we're going sometimes puts us in a position of not being prepared. And that's kind of, at least speaking for myself, I felt really unprepared when that came in from the student about wanting to bring a service animal. I've been in education, public education. I'm finishing my 26th year. I've never had that request made. Not saying that it wasn't legitimate, but I've just not experienced that myself. And then I don't believe Melanie, I think we talked, I don't think she had that encounter either. And Melanie's got a few more years in than I do. So I'm just saying, even when you have a lot of experience, there's just stuff that comes up that you're like, boy, I'd never thought that, would be something we need to have in a policy.
Well, one of the things I guess I'm thinking of is I think you have to be a little bit cautious of what we always call false economy, which means that you save a few bucks by not doing something, but then it costs you so much more because later on you miss something that now puts you vulnerable to some kind of civil or legal action that you never anticipated, or you lose money because you didn't have something in place that you didn't even know you needed. And I am just so, I worked with the board for almost 25 years, and the number of policies that you have is just phenomenal. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've never, we had policies, and I thought they were a lot, but nothing like what you've got. I mean, I have no idea how you even keep up with it, because you just have to be going through policy manuals all day long. And so to me, I guess it's hard to weigh, where you want to spend your time in creating, that atmosphere in a good school place, or, you have to oversee policies, but that was never something I looked forward to, was, oh boy, I get to write a policy, or, oh boy, I get to go check the policy manual, make sure I've got everything covered or something. So, and then also using the attorney is also important. So I know we want to be frugal and not just spend money without thought, but on the other hand, maybe it is a good use of money. So I wouldn't be opposed to it, to using the Neola services, but it's hard for me to know what the right thing for you to do is. But I wouldn't be guided by how much it costs. I'd be guided more by what's the value of the service for me. And the cost is just what it is.
Well, where does Neola get their information? I mean, do they have lobbyists in Columbus, or how do they know what policy to develop?
That's a good question, Steve. And I'm going to just say that, yes, that's more than likely what they do. I just know the majority of the schools in Allen County use Neola. And so I just know they're a trusted service provider for this. And I don't know the numbers as far as like statistically across the state of Ohio, how many school districts, but I just know that they're one of the leaders in providing this service to school districts. And it just kind of gives us a little bit more, what do I say, support, kind of like what Mike was just saying, you know, if for some reason we would get into an issue where we'd be taken to task on something, not only do we have our attorney to help us, but then we also can have Neola because they're the ones that have provided us the boilerplate template. So that kind of helps spread out the responsibility too across it. I know there have been times where I haven't felt really comfortable with, especially when I first started here, with drafting up policy simply because I'm not a policy writer.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I don't mind doing what I can, but you know, when you start getting into legal things, I think it's wise to use the people who have the degree in that and who do that day in, day out and have that knowledge. So Steve, I can't answer your question with 100% certainty, but I'm going to assume that they do have lobbyists or connections of some sort, and that's how they know that their policies line up. And certainly check.
I retired from the ESC in 2004, and prior to that, the 20 plus years that I was there, they used Neola at that time. So they've been in business for a long time. Someone looking out for every policy that comes along.
And you said if there's changes, they'll make changes to the board policy twice a year. They're willing to do that in the contract?
Yeah, what they do is, and I have just a little bit of knowledge because like Millie said with the ESC, I've never, well, I shouldn't say that. I think I've been in one meeting in my career at the ESC where I was involved in the meeting with the Neola rep. But my understanding is they will, just for instance, okay, the ESC board met Monday night.
Mhm.
And I happened to be at that board meeting. But we also got an email from the ESC superintendent the following day listing all these policy changes that were made at the ESC at the board meeting. Because see, Neola comes in and they meet with Craig, that's his name, the superintendent, Carla, and they go over the changes. And then, you know, the two of them, I mean, every once in a while, if it's a policy that affects something I'm responsible for at the ESC, I'll be asked to give my input on it. So that's pretty much what they do. But then I should also make note that when the Neola rep comes, we also then are responsible. There's all these little itemized things that they bill you for. Like we have to pay for their meals that day. We have to pay for their mileage that day. So we definitely, you're going to pay for all of that. But like Mike Shanehofer said, I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. We have no control over what we get billed for. It's just that initial setup, that $16,000, kind of like big shock there. That would be something we would definitely, if we moved in that direction, want to plan for in the budget.
Well, if we have our policies online, don't other schools, boards have their policies online?
They do. Other school districts have their policies online. I'm just looking at these additional charges. Yeah, it's $100 per hour for consultation. $36 an hour for like processing by their production office. We have to pay for their meals, which is $10 for breakfast, $15 for lunch, and $25 for dinner if they're here during those times. And then their hourly rate for travel is $25 an hour. So, you know, there's little nickel and dime type things that we'd have to pay for too.
And a lot of that cost is going to come in if you would go down this road. They come to, this is what they done when we started with them. Neola comes with mounds of policies. And he would go through each one of them to see if this applied to an ESC or not. So you're going to have the same situation, I would think, if you'd go down the road here. There is a lot of time spent with him on going through all of the policies available and which ones do you want or need as a community school. So there's a lot of time. So that's why they have the nickel and dime on meals, because he is here a lot in the beginning.
So perhaps what we could do, since Maureen offered some other options, maybe explore those and I don't know, bring it back up in the August meeting, maybe do that. I don't know, that's just a thought. I wasn't expecting the board to make a decision today. I just, again, I just felt like I needed to at least be responsible and bring it up that, hey, we might want to reconsider this again.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, and then if you had kind of a, it really depends on what you think is going to be most helpful. I think I would kind of depend on what how you approach this thing, and then just say here's the budget for the setup, and then the fees, and then each consultation visit would be cost probably approximately this much, and we could just see what the entire cost would be for the one-time cost, and then kind of a projected annual cost based on visits and all that stuff.
That'd be fun.
I think another thing you have to consider too is the size of our school compared to, I'm sure that if they were doing a school the size of Lima City, the cost would be the same. So based on a per pupil cost, it's enormous for us.
Mm.
And so if there are other alternatives, I think we need to approach those first.
Absolutely. And that's why we've held off on pursuing Neola. So Maureen, I'm going to ask that at some point, if you can, send me that information on those other.
I sure will.
Thank you.
I'll send you a few different options so you can look at them.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, the next thing I have is just an enrollment incentive, and I just wanted to kind of put this out there with the board because this past year, even though it's been, as you all know, a very unusual year, it has been probably one of our highest years as far as enrollment because we've been able to offer the online option, and we still will do blended learning next year. And my biggest concern going in, or one of my biggest concerns going into next year is I'd like to see our enrollment stay at where we're at and not lose those students that might have come to us this year because they were looking for an alternative to being in a regular school setting because they were concerned about the COVID. So with that being said, Carla and I had talked, and she had heard that Apollo had offered an incentive to their staff, like a one-time Christmas bonus, like 1.5%. And so I was kind of wondering what the board's thoughts were. We've never done anything like this before, and I don't even know how it would be calculated because I can't really say, if we kept the enrollment at 100 students or more, in August, September, November, or October, November, and I've got a student waiting on a diploma, so I'm going to have to wrap this up quick, but I can't really say that would be fair because of the high level of transiency we have here. But I guess what I'd like to do is say to the staff, if we can keep it at a certain number on average, from maybe September through the end of November, then give everybody a bonus at Christmas time for doing that, because it will more than pay for itself if we can keep that enrollment up there. I mean, sometimes kids withdraw or transfer for issues that are beyond our ability to influence them. But I do know there are times when, if we put in a little extra, which the staff is very good about doing that, but put in a little extra with those students, we can keep them on board. So that's why I put that down, simply because while we're on a high number, I'd like to keep it there and just kind of throwing something out there just to encourage the staff to, do, if they can, think of any more creative ideas on keeping the students. So just a discussion item, if you have any thoughts on that or ideas. Again, you can kind of think about it too. Share your thoughts.
I think that every student that you lose money. Every student you gain money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it would pay for itself.
Has anybody ever done anything like that? or, you know, maybe your workplace or heard about it, because I'm just trying to get ideas on how to even articulate it and put it into some sort of format so that the staff knows that this is what the goal is and how it's going to work. If that makes sense to everybody.
We just hired a gentleman in our office, Warren Glenn, who comes from a management company where
Mhm.
incentives for enrollment was a pretty big piece of everything that they did. I can have him, you know, contact you and kind of go over that.
That'd be great.
Give you some ideas on that. He's kind of done it because he ran a bunch of dropout recovery schools himself.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'm
And
gonna.
I think, well, I was just going to say, I think anything that you can do to provide just a little bit of incentive for staff is, and I was never able to give money, but I could give, you know, I could give a day off, or I could give a personal day, or I could, you know, those are things I could do. And I was surprised at how, you know, something like that is really appreciated. And I'm sure, you know, some kind of a financial bonus would be, you know, very appreciated, and just lets people know that you know, that you know, you're thanking them for doing extra work. It's not just an
Absolutely,
expectation.
absolutely, and I totally agree, Mike. So I will do a little more investigation on that and then bring it back to you as a board if I have something that's I can have you act on. Number 3, Lynn's already gone over the enrollment. We, number 4, have had no suspensions or expulsions. Number 5, no restraints or seclusions. And number 6, that's tomorrow. You are all invited to join in. We're having it on Zoom. As I mentioned, I've been handing out the diplomas personally, and I have a student waiting now, so I'm going to try to wrap up here quickly. But personally handing out the diplomas to each student. But we are going to have one just overall Zoom graduation tomorrow at 10 o'clock, just like we did last year. So that should wrap up my discussion for today.
Mindy, of the 27 that are graduating, how many are credit recovery?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm going to say
Can I,
40 of them,
I would say 80% of them, Millie.
at least 80, at least.
Okay, have you done a press release for that effect?
We can.
Yes. Yes.
That they were
I would like to, in August, when's your first day back?
the 19th.
The 19th.
Mhm.
I would like to try to get the news media to do a feature. I was thinking about this during the session today about what great things you all do there, and and have someone from the television station come in and talk to Andrew, watch Andrew teach, watch other teachers teach, and maybe interview some students that have been there for a couple of years. And I think that we don't toot our horn enough.
Sounds good.
I will be emailing you with some questions that I'll need to put in the, my request to the media.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, Maureen, you had mentioned that our school might have the most graduates.
Yeah, based on what I'm seeing for my schools, I have a few more board meetings coming up. I have 2 more this afternoon and a couple next week. But right now, I think you guys are my leader. I can get an exact count from our other people in our office, but you're my highest at this point.
That's great. I think that's something to toot our horn as much as we can on the great things that are happening. I think the next thing on the agenda, we have the second hearing of the public. And then from there, we have the next board meeting date, which we talked about earlier. And then that was August 12th, right?
17th,
17th. Okay,
10 a.m.
got it. All right. So at 10:36, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for the second. Roll call?
Mr. Shanehofer,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
yes.
Ms. Hughes,
Yes.
and Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
All right,
Happy
everyone.
summer.
Thank you.
Summer.
Have a good
See
summer.
ya.
Yep.